Is great to be with you live tonight. I am Dr. Trevor Hislop, and I have the pleasure of having Dr. Mike Ronsons-Valley with me. Dr. Mike, it's great to be with you on the call tonight. So I just
What
want to
is
kind of set up.
happening, guys? How you doing, Trevor? Thanks.
Yeah, I am doing well. It's really fun for us to be able to do this. If you're joining us live, a few things I want to just maybe set the stage for as we jump into tonight's topic. The first is because we're live, we're of course streaming technically all over the world. So we would love to hear maybe where you're joining us from. We do have a chat feature. You should all be joining us through YouTube, and there's an option there in the chat. So just reach out to us. Let us know that you're with us. Let us know where you're joining us from. And then here's how the format of tonight is actually gonna go. Mike and I are gonna walk us through some content related to our topic on staying grounded when family gets messy. And then towards the end, we're going to open it up for question and answer time. We really want to be able to interact with you. But here's how this is going to play out. We have our producer with us, Camden. While Mike and I are sharing content, he's actually monitoring the feed for us. He'll be able to give feedback. And then again, if you have questions later in our time together, that would be the appropriate place and the appropriate time to start to ask those questions. And we'll be able to see them and be able to respond accordingly. So, all right, Mike, we were just talking just before we went live about tonight's topic, staying grounded when family gets messy. And later, we're going to talk about this really cool challenge that we've created for people and how they can join us. But this actually all started with an article that you wrote for Florida Today. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I write for Florida Today at least every month, and I'm always looking for what's the most relevant topic that I can tackle. Things that people are going to be interested in. And I started to think about family, and I started to think about the holidays, and I thought, we probably should we should probably look at how to handle messy family situations. How do you deal with families during the holidays? It can get sideways half the time. You don't see these people all year. Sometimes people are coming in from out of town, and these are the people you grew up with. They're the people you love, but they're also the people that can trigger you. So I wrote this article, and it really has proven to be the foundation of a lot of what we're doing on our Live Well coaching platform for the whole month. I mean, we try to do things like we're doing right now, like live events. We try to do challenges every month. We try to do courses. So right now, we actually have this article in Florida Today that's floating around. We have a 7-day challenge that we're right in the middle of on the same topic on the Live Well coaching platform. And then we're doing this live event. Our goal is to hit you from as many directions as we can to try to give you practical strategies, because ultimately that's what we want. Is we want to give you some practical things you can do to be able to deal with your family this Christmas, and be able to love them in very real tangible ways, but not get caught in the old messy cycles that tend to create all the arguments and the anger and the frustration, the hurt and the woundedness. So that's why we're sitting here tonight doing a live event.
That's good. It's gonna be fun. I was looking at my notes, and the very first thing in our notes is introduce ourselves, and so we're already off track. So, so what I thought might be helpful. Some of you know us well. You're connected here to one of our communities, whether that's Live Well Behavioral Health, Live Well Coaching, the Live Well Center. Some of you might be joining us or being introduced to us to the very first time. So it might actually just be helpful again that we just share a little bit about who we are and what we do. So my name is Dr. Trevor Hislop. I'm a marriage and family therapist, married to my wife, Mindy. Been married a long time, 27 years. We have two young adult boys, Noah and Zachary. And I have the privilege of being a part of the team at Live Well, which Mike, maybe you can talk more about of what we do at Live Well. So.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Roncesvalles. I've got a doctorate in clinical psychology. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I'm the CEO at Live Well. And really, I guess the most important thing about me is my family is number one, right? Like that's
Mhm.
why this topic is really important to me because for me, I want to always love hard and love first my family. So I'm married to my wife Crystal. I've got gosh, my kids are getting old too, Trevor. We're getting old, man. Our kids are
They are.
growing up. So I've got a 24-year-old son, a a 19-year-old son, and a 17-year-old daughter. So we're right there with you in the trenches of family, and we're excited to kind of give you some content tonight that helps you navigate the holidays.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I mean, even just as we were sharing and about the idea of families is, yeah, we come with, some education and some expertise, but the reality is just like you said, Mike, like we're in it too. We're in the trenches, right? We have families, and some of our insights tonight are going to come
Yeah,
from textbooks and clinical studies, but a lot of this is just heart to heart, right? Of just being people who are right there in the midst of trying to love well, again in the holiday season. Yeah. So before we
yep.
get into these conversations about how do we navigate, how do we cope, how do we respond in the midst of that, wanted to start with just giving a basic kind of introduction to what we might call or how we understand what's known as a family system. Some of you are going to find this super interesting. Some of you, this is going to be kind of nerdy, and I want to do my best not to get uh, too crazy into this. But I think it's helpful to have a basic foundation. And here's how this applies as we get into this kind of idea of family work, is it's relevant to our conversation tonight, because we can show up right in our healthy adult version of ourselves, but I think more often than not we find ourselves sliding back into these patterns, which we're going to talk about later, as soon as family walks through the door. And the reality is it's not because there's weakness there, but the language we use around that is it's because there's wiring there. It's because we've stepped back into a system that has actually it's been shaping us for years, and we didn't even know it. And so the idea of family systems, so it's actually this it started out as this kind of oriented, kind of theoretical kind of idea, which is simply this idea is family is more than the sum of its parts. Right? You've probably heard something like that before in other frameworks, in other kinds of systems. Right? Families are more than just a bunch of individuals that get together or show up together, but family systems are understood as this kind of like emotional sort of unit. It's this kind of idea that everyone's actions becomes others' reactions, or reactions are connected to others within this kind of idea of family systems. In fact, one of the things that Mike and I and others do in our kind of field of work, if we're not really asking questions like who's the problem, but we're asking the question like through a lens that we're kind of informed through tonight is, but what's the pattern? Let me give you an example of this. Like, um, okay, so let's say mom gets anxious, right? Whether maybe there's something's going on. Mom gets anxious. So maybe dad ends up pulling back or withdrawing as a result of that. And then let's say dad withdraws. And then there's maybe a couple children in that family. And so when that happens, the oldest child steps up. So when the oldest child steps up, the younger kids, they um, uh, end up competing for attention, or maybe they completely pull away. This interesting kind of like just walking through this sequence, because reality is nobody planned, nobody thought, had the forethought, nobody woke up that morning and said, when mom gets anxious, here's how this is going to play out, or here's what I'm going to do. Right? Mom gets anxious, dad withdraws, the oldest child steps up, the older child steps up, the other children step away. Right? It's almost like it's choreography. Right? It's almost that kind of sequential and almost that kind of predictable. Like in family systems work, there's actually a name for this. It's called a circular causality. And so it's this influence that shows up like these loops, right? Like these kinds of interactions, they don't happen in straight lines. They happen in loops because it's not just one person. Like think about it in this way of it. Actually, I referenced this idea of a dance, um, like in families, and you may, I mean, think about this with your family. Everybody's kind of got their own dance moves. Everybody's kind of got their steps in this bigger kind of choreography. But if one person, have you, Mike, I don't know if you've ever, if I don't know if I can't remember if I've ever done this, like line dance, like and I'm just envisioning in my mind if somebody were to like get the moves wrong, right? It messes up the entire line dance, right? Like everybody who's trying to move the right
Trevor,
same
I'm
direction at the right
super
time.
happy. I'm super happy. I can tell you, I have never even tried to line dance. So I'm just going to put that out there because
Yep.
if I had, they would probably outlaw line dancing. But yeah, you're right, man. There's like a, there's like a dance that we all get used to. And I think the thing with families, as you're describing it, this like circular pattern that we
Yeah.
all get in, a lot of times we don't even recognize the pattern. So as
Right.
you're describing this, I'm thinking of even people that we work with in the live well clinics. I'm like, man, they're functioning and being triggered to do things, and they don't even understand why they do it. It's all unconscious. And the
That's
family
exactly
of
it.
origin, like the family you grew up in, is the most powerful system that you'll ever be a part of. So I mean, I
Mhm.
resonate with what you're talking about, Trevor. Like you're describing what happens around the holidays and around other moments when we're with our family of origin. We get triggered to do things that we aren't even really consciously aware that we're doing, and we
Right.
and we sometimes question what the heck we were doing after we leave. We're like,
Right.
why did I get in that
Like the
screaming
line
match, or
dance.
why did I withdraw, or why did I do what exactly.
So I think it's important for us as we kind of move through this is to really kind of answer that question. Why is it so hard? Like why is change so hard in the midst of this? And it's simply around this idea of family systems, or systems in general, have this kind of idea of um, uh, technically we would call homeostasis, which is simply this idea of being able to have like like an established like center point. Here's an illustration for you. Think about it this way: like um, uh, every family has this kind of almost like a like thermostat, like this preferred emotional temperature in which they want to function. And so here's how it kind of shows up. Like when we start to change the temperature in the room, right? When we say no instead of sure, or like we usually do, or we actually ask for help instead of the family rule of, well, you just suck it up and deal with it, or be honest enough to talk about like what's not working rather than smile through it and just like pretend. Like those would all be examples of like there's a family rule and we're trying something different. But here's what's interesting about that thermostat. This actually gets into what we would call an open system. An open system in family work is the idea of open systems are flexible. This would be a great way to illustrate the idea of thermostat. So, like with a thermostat, like as an example, say you open the window. Well, the thermostat knows, particularly if you have a smart thermostat, it knows to adjust the temperature, right? Because the window got open, right? If it's cold outside, the thermostat's going to know to turn on the heat, right? If it's hot outside, the thermostat's going to know to turn on the AC. It's constantly this idea of homeostasis. It's constantly looking to regulate. Homeostasis in the idea of family work is basically saying we like familiar. We don't like change, right? So
Mhm.
these systems are constantly prioritizing what's familiar, because what's familiar is oftentimes for us. Now it may not be true, but I think in many cases familiar is what feels it feels predictable, right? Even if it's not healthy, even if it's not safe. So this idea of open systems in families,
Mhm.
they're flexible. Like there's room for feedback, there's space for honesty, right? There's this place for imperfection, right? There's what we call emotional safety, the ability to be able to talk about how we're actually feeling and what's really going on. There's space for boundaries that can be discussed without, like, like World War III happening, and the ability to, to connect in that way. And it's really interesting with that compared to what we might know as what's called a closed system. So here's the difference with a closed system. A closed system. I'm trying to think of like an old clock. It'd be a great example of an old system or a closed system. Okay, like the kind of clock that has all the cogs and all the wheels in it, right? And as soon as it's in motion, right, everything has to fall in line, right? But think about it this way, like with a clock, like if one of the gears slowed down or one of the gears just stopped working, it's gonna like create tension for everything in the whole clock, right? It's gonna grind the gears, right? And
Yeah.
eventually it's gonna cause tension and friction within the clock. And eventually the whole clock's gonna like break, right? Because that one gear wasn't doing what it was told to do, which is, you know, stay with it, right? Back to this idea of the dance that I talked about earlier. Okay, that's the idea of a closed system. Closed systems are there's like these rigid rules, right? Things like we don't talk about it, like don't upset dad. Um, be grateful and smile, or like those kinds of things. Like where there's these very rigid. We don't have space for flexibility, and so it becomes extremely disruptive. So I could probably go on, and I know we're going to run out of time. And so, Mike, I think in the midst of this, it'd be really helpful to talk about. So, not just that we have these family systems, talking about that they're very, very powerful, they're very influential, they're hard to actually navigate, whether they're open or closed. But in the midst of that we actually show up with some kind of role, like some kind of responsibility in the midst of our families. It's like every family is like it's like we're characters in a film, or we're some kind of cast in in a play, right? And we all play our part. I could be really interested, like just talk with us more about that.
Yeah. So you set the stage perfectly, Trevor, because what you just described is like these families that force us consciously or unconsciously to go back to these old behaviors or these old roles or these things that we do that we don't fully understand why we do them. So you've got these open systems that sometimes can just tolerate change and can tolerate people getting healthier or switching, God forbid, like a political perspective or an idea or an opinion that's different than the family's kind of old school. Here's what we've done for years and years and years, and then you've got the closed families that are going to just push back so intensely on anyone that tries to shift or change or operate outside of the role. And this is why a lot of you, when you get back to your family, you struggle because if you're going back to your family and you're just playing your old role, you're probably just super comfortable in it. And I mean, you might hate it, but you just are doing what you're supposed to do. But if you're one of the people that is saying, I want to be able to function in this family differently, and you come from a closed family system, it can get really, really tough. So I want to talk about two different ways that people can react and respond to family systems that don't really want your change. They don't want you showing up in any other role than you've ever showed up in. Like they resist and block any effort you have at getting healthy. So how do we respond to that typically? Typically we respond in one of two ways. Either we overfunction or we underfunction. Either overfunction or we underfunction. I'll talk about the people that overfunction first. If you overfunction, you're the person that just carries everything, right? You're the one who's the responsible one. You're the one who's the fixer. You're the peacemaker. You're the one who notices like all the emotional shifts. Like okay, I can tell my mom she's a little ticked. And so I need to intervene here. I'm going to ask her how she's doing. I'm going to tell her the turkey was great. I, you're really watching closely and you almost automatically step in. And you step in not because you're controlling, not because you're one of those people that has to like control everything. You step in because somewhere along the way, you learned if I don't hold this together, it might fall apart. And you probably have experiences that you've gone through that you could point to very specifically that would say, I remember doing this when I was a kid, or I remember moments when I didn't step up and I didn't take care of everybody and I didn't like let myself just flow into them over and over and over again and take care of everybody. I remember things got tough. So the idea is if you're over functioning, you're taking responsibility for everyone's emotion in the family system, and you just can't stand to watch people falter. You can't stand to put yourself in a position where, someone might struggle or someone might be upset. And what happens is that really begins to impact your nervous system. Like basically, your peace depends on whether or not you can control the outcomes. Your peace around your family depends on whether or not everybody feels okay. So you became and have and always become the strong one, the mature one, the spiritually responsible one, the one who takes the low road, the one who's going to, be the peacemaker, and you've anticipated the needs and absorbed all the emotion. And the issue is people probably praised you for this all along. So think about it. If you're an overfunctioner, you've probably heard for years, decades even, man, Sally is just so mature. Wow, what just such a servant. She has such a great heart. He's such a sweet boy. Oh, he's such a good boy. It, and if you're a Christian, you come from a Christian household, it's oh, he's just like Jesus. He's what Christ likeness. And in the meantime, you're so stressed out, your nervous system is just screaming at you like, I can't do this anymore. So that's what an overfunctioner really looks like in in reality. And then if you go from that, it becomes real
Mm.
intuitive as to what a under functioner is, right? So if you're an under functioner, you basically you're one of those people that says, I'm so put off by the way this family operates and what I've had to deal with over the years and the drama that we have that I'm gonna build some walls and I might show up for Christmas, but I'm not really gonna engage. I'll be present, but you're not gonna get the real me. You're gonna get a mask. I'm gonna do what I've got to do, say what I've got to say, but my whole goal is just to get through a day. And there's lots of you watching this. Your plan on Christmas Day is to just get through the day. I've got to go to my mom and dad's for 4 hours. I'm just going to get through it. I've got to be around the whole family for that Christmas dinner as I'm flying under the radar. And if that's you and you're intellectually honest about it, you probably spend a lot of time just deferring, letting other people lead. And you've learned to say, fine, whatever you want. Where do you want to go for dinner? I don't care. What do you think we should do? Oh, I don't mind. I don't know.
Mm.
On the surface, here's what everybody says about you. You're so easygoing. Oh man, oh, she can just roll with the punches. She's so great. But underneath this behavior often comes from something really, really much deeper. And it comes from the sense that if I speak up, if I try to lead, if they really saw me, if they really knew me, they would most certainly reject me. It would most certainly cause
Mm,
problems. I, it's just not worth it for me to try to show up. And there's reasons why. I mean, maybe you were criticized when you expressed yourself. Maybe there were strong personalities that you struggled to figure out how to deal with. Man, my mom was so big, or my dad was just larger than life, and it felt overwhelming. If you're a youngest child, a lot of times this can play out. Sometimes if you're the youngest child, you're like the apple of everyone's eye. But sometimes if you're the youngest child, you just learn to be quiet. I just spoke with a guy yesterday in my office, and he said, Mike, I've always wanted to feel valued and loved. And like my older siblings actually thought I had a brain to come up with an idea that they could honor and respect and process. I want them to see me. And he's fought for that for like 26 years.
wow.
And so because of all this, you've learned to stay quiet. You've learned to stay agreeable. You've learned to just stay out of the way. And that strategy, I mean, you have to understand it's protected you all along. What you've really been mitigating is you don't like to feel the rejection. You don't like to feel that sense of distance. You don't like to feel degraded. You don't like to feel criticized. So you're like, screw it. I'm not going to show up. But our goal tonight is to say, look, there are things you can do to begin to fight against being an overfunctioner or an underfunctioner. The things you can do to say, I'm not going to take responsibility for everybody anymore. I'm just not. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm responsible for the emotional temperature of the entire room. Or I'm going to make the decision that I'm going to show up and I'm going to let the cards fall where they may. For the first time, I'm going to say some things. Maybe for the first time this holiday season, you can be clear and direct and open and honest and begin to get your heart out on the table. And my hunch is if you do that in a loving way, now you can't be a jerk, right? So let's be clear. You can't just be this raging, like, okay, I'm ready to go now. So get ready, buckle your seatbelt. I'm telling you all, if you do this in a loving way and you speak the truth in love, I bet your family wants to see you way more than you think they do. So that's how we typically respond to these roles. We either overfunction or we underfunction.
That's really, really interesting. So you were talking about that, and maybe just you have any thoughts on this? I think there are some influences that maybe we just don't give credit to. As an example, you mentioned a youngest child. So, birth order is one of those factors. Gender roles might be one of those factors. Cultural influences, religious convictions. Like, how do you see those things playing into these patterns?
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to recognize is our families didn't do this to us on purpose.
Mhm.
And we fight that in the office all the time, both Trevor and I, and our entire staff. We've got 40 something clinicians that live well, right? Psychiatrists, psychologists, and marriage and family therapists. They all fight this battle. People that come in and you're just so angry at your family for doing this. They did this to me. 90% of families, 90% of parents try the best they can. They're stressed out. They've got their own story. They've got their own woundedness. They did the best they can. And a lot of times, yeah, they messed up, but it wasn't malicious and it wasn't an attempt to just crush you or suck you dry. And so when you think about it from that perspective, yeah, you can kind of see all these pieces that Trevor's talking about. Some of it is just an artifact of where you fall in the birth order. If you're a firstborn, probably a lot of pressure on you. Probably a lot of pressure on you to be perfect. You probably spent a lot of time just feeling like you always had to have the answers. You probably struggle with some perfectionism, and you probably want to avoid things that might facilitate perceived failure. on your part. If you're a middle child, you feel caught in the middle sometimes. Sometimes you never feel seen. You have lots of pressure to mitigate and mediate, right? You're always in the middle. If you're a youngest child, you're either, as I said earlier, fighting for people to see me, like, please see me, please listen to me, or you're you're one of those people that like I've only been talking for 90% of the conversation. I think I need to talk more. Why are you speaking? Like, please be quiet. Like, those are the kind of things that we end up living in and walking in, if with our role in based on our birth order. And then there's other contingencies like Trevor's talking about. There's just certain ways. Some of you grew up in really rigid Christian households, and that facilitates just a deep fear in the family of someone deviating from the standard family party line. Other of you grew up in really permissive households, and there was no idea was a bad idea. Like, can I go do cocaine all weekend? Of course you can. Do you need cash? That was sort of what it looks like, and so that breeds its own kind of like lack of care and a feeling of just wanting someone to care enough to draw a boundary and deeply desiring connection and concern from people. So yeah, Trevor, there are forces at play in our families that drive this. The biggest piece of getting through all of it is to say, okay, I I can't try to fix everything that's happened. I can't blame anybody for all that's happened. I need to just allow myself to accept the reality that my family did the best they could. My job right now is to do the best job I can to just do the next healthy thing and release outcomes. I'm just going to be healthy, and I'm going to release people to be who they are.
Yeah, that's good. So if we're kind of building here, right? This kind of idea of we all come from family systems, right? We all like I appreciate what you said, which is true. We battle with this every day in the offices, right? Our families didn't do this to us intentionally. There wasn't an intent to harm, right? But this is just the dynamic of being in the systems with the influences that are contributing in the midst of that. I think there's every bit so. In
Mhm.
fact, we're going to
Yeah.
talk about just a few moments, like how our nervous system shows up in that moment, right? How there's tension that rises in us. And I think it's important for us before we get to that to really kind of identify there's kind of this gap or this space between there's this old role that we're kind of talking about, like we all have adapted and adjusted in some way, fallen into this family role even if we didn't ask for it. So part of what we're doing in the midst of this, if you kind of just track with us, is this idea of like it's really helpful for us to give it a name. It's really helpful for us to understand what is the role that I was assigned, or what is the role that I fell into, or what is the way in which I think a really empathetic way to consider this is what have I done by intent to help? Right? That's usually I'm over functioning, under functioning. It's usually because I'm trying to when I talk about homeostasis, right? I'm trying to help find balance. I'm trying to when something gets out of sorts, I'm supporting to help us get back in, right? And again, if we saw it in a loving, graceful way rather than a critical and condemning way, to be able to say, I, just like everyone else in my family, in anyone in any family, right? The origin of that is I'm just trying to help. And that I'm trying to help balance. I'm trying to help maintain, right, that part of it. But nonetheless, we have this part of that. Okay, so there's this role that we've been living in for years, and for many of us for decades. But then there's this gap that I just referenced, and it's the gap to, but that's not necessarily who we are today, right? If we think about like our adult self, our adult identity, like the practical part. I mean, maybe you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, right? And you show up as your adult self and you walk through the doors or you sit down at a dining room table with the family, and instantly you find yourself back in that space, right? You feel like the kid again where your voice doesn't matter. or you jump into, as Mike mentioned just a moment, like the role of the fixer. Like it's my job to come to the rescue, and it's my job to make sure that everything's in order, and it's my job to save everybody, and it's my job to keep the peace, in the midst of the holiday chaos that happens with our family, right? We jump back into, or maybe it's or I have to be the funny one, or I have to be the rebel, right? Whose job it is to disrupt when things get kind of out of sorts, right? So again, we know these. It's helpful for us to give names to them, right? So I would challenge us, like actually that beyond tonight, that maybe you do some work to be able to say, hey, what has my role been? But again, then compare that to the adult self, right? The self that you are today. So it's important to actually give language to that. So the technical term for that is what we call differentiation. And differentiation is just a fancy word that means to stand apart or to separate. So here's how we might think of this if we were to put this in kind of a working definition uh, of uh, of what we're talking about tonight. Differentiation is something like I can stay connected to you and myself at the same time. Right, like I can share space with you, I can honor you and still I can honor myself. Right? I can separate or differentiate. This is the opposite of these terms of what you might heard of like codependency or enmeshment or some of these other fancy terms. But the simple idea is I can hold space for me and with me and still be connected with you in it. Right? It's kind of this idea of like we can agree to disagree. I can still be my own person and you can still be your own person and we can still be connected with one another. Like, let me give you a couple examples of what poor differentiation looks like in families, and then the contrast of what healthy differentiation looks like. So, um, poor differentiation might be something like I just get swallowed up by my family's expectations. Like when I walk in the room, when I'm in the conversations, I can't really hold space for myself, or I don't really even sort of exist in that moment. Poor differentiation as I get pulled into, sucked into whatever the system is, whatever the cycle is. And again, I can't really be myself in those moments. Or actually, it's the opposite of that, what tends to happen, which is also poor differentiation. Or I just completely shut down. I completely shut people out. Right, because in that moment, the opposite is happening. It's I don't have space for other people. I only have space for me. Okay, that's how poor differentiation plays out, right? I'm consumed by everybody else's thoughts and feelings, emotions and needs, right? And there's no space for me, or I don't have time for anyone else but me, and so I shut down and I push away. So let me give you the contrast of that is what does healthy differentiation look like in our family systems? But I think the practical parts of when we show up with our families for gatherings in the holidays. So here'd be an example like, I can love you and still say something like, hey, you know what? I disagree. Or you know what, that just doesn't work for me. Right? That's what healthy differentiation is. I love you, I honor you, I respect you, I see you. And again, that doesn't work for me, or I'm just not quite sure that I'm on the same page with you about that. Or I can show up with you and we can have meaningful conversations about religion and politics and, and whatever it might be, and still hold on to my values, right? Still be able to hold my own limits, right? Even in the midst of sharing that space with you. Okay, so let's connect this, and then in just a moment, then Mike, I'm gonna throw it back to you because I know we have more to talk about. Is in the midst of this, there's something else I think it's important for us to talk about, which is this idea of yes, our families. We talked about kind of we got assigned roles and we've played out those roles, and yes, we've got memories connected to and attached to those roles. But I think there's also something else happening in the midst of this kind of work of our adult self, our identity self, which is the part of we've been part of a story. Like we've been part of a narrative, and this comes back to Mike, what you were talking about. Like I'm the strong one, or I'm the emotional one, or I'm the unreliable one, or I'm the spiritual one. It's not just that we played a role, but somewhere along the way, unknowingly, for most of us, we started to actually start to own that. And before we know it, it actually became like a part of our identity. And so in the midst of that, now that might play out to be able to say, oh, well, that just feels like a strength, or that feels like it's part of my personality, or that feels like a temperament, kind of thing. And there's merit to that. But I think in the midst of it, it's important for us to be able to pay attention how closely connected our old roles are with the adjustment or the ownership that we have taken in it, even into our adult self around our identity. And so I don't think we need to be critical about that, but I think we do need to be curious, right? Like which parts of my story are true, right? Which ones do I agree with? Which ones are really part of who I am? Which parts have I outgrown? That's just not me anymore. Which parts were never actually me, but I just felt like I had to role play. And I think when we can pay attention to that, it's really helpful for us to get to the place where we're going to move in seconds to be able to say, so I can stay grounded, right? So I can kind of I can be
Mhm.
present in those moments. And so I want to give you a quick exercise before we get to our next segment. And so it's called a self snapshot. In fact, in a few moments, we're gonna talk about the challenge that we've created. And this exercise actually is one of the elements in the challenge, a grounded self snapshot. And so here's what it is. If you want to grab a pen, piece of paper, take note of this, or even better yet, when we give instructions at the end, go ahead and get access to the challenge because you'll find it in there in this. But here's what it is. We would encourage you to come up with one core value. You're just going to identify one core value, something that really matters to me, something that's really meaningful to me. Maybe it's courage, kindness, faithfulness, justice. Again, some kind of core value, and you're going to write it down. And then you're going to come up with one strength that you actually bring. You might, maybe in this case, you bring it to the family. I'm a good listener, or I bring steadiness, or I help people make sense of things, or I bring warmth and compassion, right? Something that is just identified as this sort of idea of strength. And then the third one is this: one way that you have shown evidence of growth. So uh, maybe it's I'm going to see a counselor. Maybe it's I've started to set boundaries and I've learned to say no. Maybe it's I've started telling the truth and I've just been more authentic and more real and honest with myself. So here's the idea of this, right? If you identify one value, one strength, and one growth area, the idea of this becomes sort of like this mantra for you. When you get in those moments, when the old role, the pressure and the tension and the stress shows up, right? You've got something to ground you. You've got something to be able to say, wait, 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 hold up. This is what matters to me. This is the strength that I bring to this family and this relationship. This is the ways that I've outgrown that old role, or the ways that I'm growing in my current self. Now, it's not the only way, as Mike's going to talk about in a moment, but I think it's a helpful way. It's a helpful way for us to be able to say, hey, I've got a grounding mantra that reminds me that I'm not who I was. And I can have courage, I can take a deep breath, and I can lean in to something new, something different.
So it's really very good stuff, Trevor, because what you're describing is our intrinsic ability to choose how we're going to respond to stressful situations. Like at the end of the day, As Viktor Frankl said, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, he was in 4 different concentration camps. The one thing the Nazis could not take from me was the last of the human dignities, as he called it.
Mm.
The ability to choose how I'm going to respond to difficult situations. I love that because, man, if
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl can respond to, man, just evil out of his value system to say, I'm not gonna let them corrupt my ability to choose who I am and how I represent myself and what I do going forward. Man, you can do this. Your fa- your family might be tough, but they're not Nazis. I mean, I hope. I hope they're not Nazis. So that gives us some real kind of something to sink our teeth into to say, okay, what is my value system? I would encourage you guys, please do what Trevor just asked you to do. Just take that little grounded self snapshot and give yourself something to focus on this holiday season to say, I'm acting out of my value system. I don't care what my mother does. I'm acting out of my value system. I don't care how my dad criticizes me. I'm acting out of my value system. I don't care what Uncle Charlie, I don't care how drunk he gets and how silly he talks. I'm doing me. All right. So why do we struggle with that? Why do we struggle to just do the healthy things? Think about it. What keeps you from walking into your family 10 years ago and saying, hey guys, guess what? Adult me is showing up. I'm going to be me. You know the answer to this. We're terrified to do that. Why? Because the family of origin is the most powerful system we'll ever be a part of. We still have some of those old fears and anxieties about asserting ourselves that because we're little kids when we're learning all these strategies, right? You're 8 and 10 and 7 and 13. You don't have a fully functioning frontal lobe. And because of that, we interpret all of that drama that we went through as kids and all of the hard things that we experienced. The brain experiences that as threat. And when you experience threat, your brain instantly goes into fight or flight mode and you can't execute the positive healthy skills. You can't act out of your value system because neurologically you're trying to stay alive. I know that sounds like it's hyperbole and maybe too much and maybe not real, and I'm telling you that's exactly how it is. Neurologically, you're ready for battle, and if you're ever going to act out of your value system, you have to allow yourself to say, okay, I I'm going to calm my brain and my body down, get out of fight or flight before I ever try to show up and act out of my value system. A million different ways you can do this. And I'm not really going to teach much on that tonight because that would be another whole hour. So I'm just going to tell you there's things like
Mhm.
breathing deeply. That sounds crazy. Breath work is so powerful. You can take a 10-second pause. A lot of times when we're in situations and we're perceiving threat and we're stressed out, we're overwhelmed, and the temperature's going up, we just react. Like count to 10, like step away, like give yourself a chance to just breathe before you respond. And sometimes as you do that, you can muster the energy to kind of say, okay, what's the mantra I need to lean into? And this is what you will have developed with your grounded self snapshot, but just the ability to kind of say, okay, I can't quite articulate it. My frontal lobe sort of turned off right now, but I wrote it down. Let me open my phone, go to the bathroom, remove myself from the pressure situation, and read through. Oh, I'm a child of God, created in His image. I'm going to focus on the healthy process. I'm going to release outcomes. I'm just going to show up with kindness, love, and good, healthy boundaries and let the outcomes be what they're going to be. Whatever that mantra sounds like for you, read it, repeat it, calm yourself down. And then when your brain and your body are calm, you have a chance at executing the healthy things with your family. You don't have a chance when your brain is perceiving threat and you're in fight or flight mode. You don't have a chance. So the whole idea is calm your brain and your body down before you respond. All right. So, guys, I think we have set the stage for you. I hope we've normalized what you're going through. I hope we've normalized why sometimes family can be so tough. And I hope you're starting to kind of piece together, man, here's why I find myself in this role. Here's why I always rush in and overfunction and take care of everybody and try to be all things to all people. Here's why I walk in that room with my guard up, like no one's going to see me. And if you can begin to kind of make some meaning here and understand why you do these things, then it does free you up to go right back to that grounded self snapshot. If there's anything you get from this little moment we took together, it's work on trying to understand like who I am. What does healthy look like
Mm.
when I go into my family this Christmas? And I'm just going to do that. So we have a strategy for you, right? We're not leaving you hanging. This is just a small moment where we put our heads together and we kind of give you some information. And as I describe sort of a next step, I want to kind of throw it open. If you have a comment or you have something that you want to say, just chat us about it right there in the stream. Someone put us. I was looking at it earlier. They said, "Stop talking about me, Dr. Wright." I'm sorry. I don't know who that is, but I wasn't talking about you. I mean, it might have seemed like it,
I
but it
love
really
that.
wasn't you. Anyways, so if you have if you have questions for us, please just put it in the chat right now, and we'll answer those questions, even if we take a little bit longer. But the next steps, Trevor, can you describe sort of a good, healthy next step that they can take by doing that 7-day challenge?
Absolutely. Yep. So we have, I'm just going to pull up so we can see there we go. 1 second. There we go. We have created a 7-day challenge, just as Mike said. And it's actually exactly on this topic. And it's called The Gift of Being Present. So I know it's kind of a play on words and picking up on kind of this Christmas kind of theme, but the gift of being present. Right? So there's this whole idea of staying grounded when family gets messy. And so here's what we would love for you to do. You can find your way over to livewell-coaching.com. That's the site where we host our coaching services. LiveWell Coaching is an incredible resource. We host not only events there, but we have challenges like this one. We have courses. We have on-demand content that you can just find that's going to help you in practical, tangible ways, just like we hope this is for you tonight. And so it's completely free to get into this challenge. In fact, even as I'm saying this, I'm actually wondering maybe we could actually put the link in the chat. Maybe Camden, our producer, maybe be able to help us with that, to be able to get that in there again for any of you who just want to go directly to find this challenge. And it's going to walk through for 7 days some insight like Mike and I shared. It's going to have a specific challenge, like when I talked about earlier, this grounded snapshot. That's one of the days. That's a great example of what kind of content you're going to get in the challenge. And then you're just going to get some encouragement to keep learning and keep growing and kind of keep going through the midst of that. And so again, I think it's an incredible resource for you. I mean, if we just think about it today, we're 7 days from Christmas Eve, if I do my math right. So if you started today, it take you up to Christmas Eve, or if you start tomorrow, right, that's going to take you up to Christmas. I think it'd be a great way for you. I think what's also important about this, Mike, we didn't even really touch on this much, but the content we talked about tonight, I mean, not surprising, we're not the only ones who feel this. What I mean by that is every member of your family feels this tension. Every person in your family has to navigate and negotiate this very thing. And so when we can start to open up to that awareness, it actually can something happens inside of us, right? Where there's more empathy, there's more understanding, right? There's a bit of compassion, right? Be able to say like, "Oh, I'm not the only one who walked in, to dinner tonight and my heart's beating out of my chest," right? I'm not the only one who sat down at the table and I feel like I'm the little kid again. I'm not the only one who's jumping into over functioning and under functioning, because that's the dance. That's what we do, right? And so here's my encouragement in that is
Yeah.
invite somebody to join you, right? Have somebody join you in this challenge over the next 7 days.
Maybe you should actually line dance. Like, I'm just kidding. That would be a very bad idea. Don't do that. There's a question in the chat.
Yep.
What can you share about dealing with the guilt you feel from setting boundaries when you know being too available to certain family members is too much and you need to back away? It's a super good question because remember we talked earlier when you feel this sense that I want to show up differently, but then you get in the situation and you just can't execute, your brain is perceiving it as threat. And sometimes that will come across as stress. Sometimes it'll come across as just deep fear. But sometimes we're so used to getting guilted and shamed and criticized and belittled when we break the family rules that we can respond to that feeling of threat or that situation of threat with what I call false guilt. So let's talk about the difference between true guilt and false guilt. So true guilt is actually a good healthy emotion. If you ever
Mhm.
if you ever feel true guilt, you want to accept that and just lean into it because that's the very thing that God uses in our life to correct us. So true guilt is an emotion that we feel whenever we're doing something that is just malicious and it's designed to hurt people and it's unhealthy and we at the office say it's when you're hurting yourself or hurting someone else with malicious intent. Like when we're doing that, we need to feel guilty. If I go to Target and I cut somebody off in a parking place that they've been waiting for and curse at them when I get out of my car, I mean that's just like that's not good healthy behavior, right? Like I should feel guilty about that. That's wrong. It's malicious. It's not caring. It's belittling. It's all the things. And I what is the purpose of true guilt? It's so that I'll turn from those things that are causing pain and death and hurt and pain and destruction and wounding to some people's life. And I'll walk towards those things that bring life and joy and peace and hope. Right. So if you have real true guilt in response to something right here where I'm actively hurting myself or someone else, we need to respond to that. But anytime you feel guilt about a behavior or a boundary that's not designed to hurt us or hurt other people, that's false guilt. And if I look at that question, that you're feeling guilt because of the old ties of the family of origin, and the battleground becomes your mind here. When you feel the emotion of guilt, you've got to identify it as false guilt and say, wait, I'm not being malicious, I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm just doing the healthy thing. I did exactly what Trevor asked me to do. I kind of created that snapshot of myself, and I'm just acting out of my value system, and I'm doing my best to be healthy, and my heart's in the right place. So this guilt is not a legitimate emotion. I'm just kind of getting pulled back into the guilt of the family system and the shame of breaking the rules that they expect of me. So my job right now is to tell myself the truth. This is healthy. I'm doing the healthy thing. I can only take care of me and I can't take care of other people and their behavior and their emotions. I'm not going to overfunction here. I'm just going to let other people deal with their emotion, but I can have empathy for them. So if someone is really hurt by a boundary that you draw, the way I talk about that is do draw the boundary in love. So start with empathy, so you start with basically just paraphrasing whatever it is you think they're feeling. And it might be, Mom, look, I know how important it is for you to have everybody together all day on Christmas. I trust me. I've been doing 40 Christmases with you, so I know this is a big deal, and I know your heart's in the right place, and I know you just want us to create the family experience, and you want this for the grandkids. Man, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. But so it's empathy, 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 but boundary. Man, I feel so spent already. I can't do it. I can't do it and be available for my kids the way I need to be available for my kids. So I've got half a day, and that's all I've got. And I want you to know I love you and I'm with you and I'm for you. But that's all I'm able to do and still be the healthy version of myself that I need to be for my kids. And once you do that, what you've done is you've released yourself from that shame of I'm somehow being uncaring and loving because you've spent a bunch of time leading up to that boundary communicating, hey, I get you. But having said that, I've got to balance taking care of you and your heart with taking care of me and my heart and my energy level and my kids. Then it becomes a matter of, okay, I'm going to take care of my side of the fence. And what I mean by that is boundaries are like a backyard. You ever been in a neighborhood and it's like one of those like zero lot line neighborhoods is just a house and a fence and a house and every house has like these little fences, right? If I lived in that neighborhood and I went and I just cut my neighbor's lawn for them. They come home after their day at work. They look in their backyard, and I'm back to, hey, neighbor, and I'm cutting their grass, pruning their flowers. What are they going to do? Are they going to be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Mike's working in the backyard. No, they're going to be, Mike, what are you doing? Hey, I'm cutting the grass. This is no. This is my yard. This. I take care of the flowers. I trim the bushes. I cut the grass. It would be really weird for me to take care of their side of the fence, right? I take care of my side of the fence. I cut my shrubs back. I cut my grass. They take care of their side of the fence. And once you do the boundary in a loving way and you speak the truth in love, you can't take responsibility for what's not yours. All you can do is take care of your side of the fence. Your mom, your dad, your family, they have to take care of their side. They have to be able to deal with the emotions that come from living in a world that's not perfect. It's not, yeah. And to use that metaphor, it's not perfect that, you can't be there all day. It'd be great if you could be there all day, but you can't. So it's just accepting where you're at, what healthy looks like for you. You're going to act out of your value system and you're going to let other people take care of their emotions and their side of the fence. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's great. I think in the midst of that, let me just add maybe a quick bullet point of how you might progress through boundaries, and not to belabor this because I either want to move on and then I know we need to wrap up. Is I think first off, it's helpful for us to be able to start from the place of assessing the need for a boundary. And so from this question, it sounds like that's exactly what the individual is doing. They're assessing the need for a boundary. But once we've assessed the need for a boundary, we move to the second step in this kind of sequence, which is, well, then I need to establish the boundary. Is this a boundary of time? Is this a boundary of space? Is this a boundary of like the holidays of gifts and finances? Is this a boundary of whatever it might be, right? So I need to be able to establish, okay, what is the actual boundary? If it's hey, I can be there for 4 hours, right? But I can't be there for all the hours, right? Establish the boundary. After you've established the boundary, then it's really important. I think this is what often gets missed is we have to communicate the boundary, right? We have to actually honor the other people on the other side of this to be able to say, hey, you need to know this is the boundary. Mike, kind of allude to that, like, hey, that's the other side of the fence. And we have to be able to determine, so hey, where's this fence line? So that you can honor them with that and they can honor you by understanding that that fence line exists. So after we've communicated that boundary, then we have to be able to be prepared for one of the hardest parts of this, which is enforce the boundary. So hypothetically, if you committed to spend 4 hours at one family member's house because you have to get in the car and you have to drive to another family member's house to spend the next 4 hours, right? And they're going to pressure you and push you like, hey, we haven't had dessert yet, and we still got more presents to open, and well, I can't believe you're leaving already, and right, that part of being able to enforce like, hey, I said I'd be here for 4 hours. It's time to leave, and you're gonna hold that. But I think it's important that the last part of this, and I think this is what becomes the sequence, becomes actually secular, is it's really important that we evaluate boundaries. What I mean by that is boundaries are intended to be flexible. Boundaries allow us to be able to make decisions and determinations about, right, our side of the fence, what's working for us, what's healthy for us, what's helpful for us. So in the midst of that, rather than these hard, rigid boundaries that we set and we stick to for the rest of our lives, say, no, these are boundaries that we set for now because they seem appropriate for us now, but we're going to come back and we're going to reevaluate them. And then when we evaluate them, we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to reassess, we're going to reestablish, we're going to recommunicate, and we're going to reinforce. And if we have some kind of pattern like that helps us in a really practical way, to be able to move through that work. Okay. I was just texting with our producer Cam. He did note that, and you probably all see this, that the link for the challenge is in the chat. So again, if you can find it there, click on it. That's how you'll be able to join us for this 7-day challenge. Mike, anything just as we wrap up, you want to share?
No, man, I hope that you guys are encouraged by this. This is challenging and it's difficult, but it just changing just a few tweaks changes the whole system. So just know that we're with you and we're for you. I hope you guys go and do that challenge and participate in it. It certainly can't hurt, right? Tell your friends. We want as many people as possible to get access to this information, and we want it to be something that as many people can take part in this holiday season so that they can have the best, less stressed holiday season they've had in a long, long time. So thank you guys for the opportunity tonight to be with you, to speak into you. Let us know if you have any questions. Link is in the chat, and hopefully we'll see you soon on the Live Well coaching platform.
Yeah, that's well said. I think maybe as a quick note for some of you, this might have raised more questions, or maybe it inspired you to get some more support. We referenced this at the very beginning of our time when we introduced ourselves, but Mike and I are part of an incredible team called Live Well Behavioral Health, and Live Well Behavioral Health is a brick and mortar in-person clinic in the state of Florida. And so if you're in Florida, we're on the East Coast in Melbourne. We'd love to support you here, or telehealth in the state of Florida. If you're beyond the state of Florida, again, reach out to us and we can connect in any way that we can. So Live Well Behavioral Health, again, if you're just looking for some specifically some clinical support, again, we would love to help make sure you get that. Live Well Coaching is really this idea. It goes beyond the borders of therapy, of clinical work, and beyond the state of Florida. This is Live Well Coaching. Is this exactly what we're doing here? Providing resources, tools, strategies, encouragements, insights, again, through this challenge, through the many other challenges that we're doing. And so again, would encourage you to go find us there. So just as Mike mentioned, we hope that you guys found this helpful. We'd love to connect with you, and we just hope that you have an incredible holiday season. And I know for some of you that does mean connecting with families and to be able to put the things that we talked about tonight into practice. All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be on the lookout for our next live event. Thanks.